Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women's Fund Grants in Action panel on holistic defense. Thank you for taking time from your busy day to learn more about this groundbreaking step in criminal justice reform. My name is Mickey Andina, and as a member of the research committee, it was my honor to meet with our project implementers, Family Services Agency, and to usher holistic defense onto this year's Women's Fund ballot. I cannot tell you how proud I am to be part of a group of forward-thinking women like yourselves who voted for this innovative program. A sincere thanks to all of you. I can well imagine that, like me, some of you have had first or secondhand experience with the criminal justice system. Yes. The Reverend Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Today, through shows like Orange is the New Black, American Crime, Ava DuVernay's Oscar-nominated documentary 13, the limited series When They See Us, and more, we know the reality of Martin Luther King's words and the disproportionate impact that injustice has on women. The majority of women entering the criminal justice system are convicted of low-level, nonviolent felonies or misdemeanors, sometimes referred to as survival crimes, such as theft, fraud, prostitution, or drug offenses. Because these women are often primary caregivers of young children, each repeat offense has a profound impact on the well-being of their families and their communities. Just a few interesting numbers I'd like to share with you. Each year in Santa Barbara County, approximately 2,700 women pass through the criminal justice system. 60 to 75% of these women are likely to reoffend within 1 year. And since 1980, the population of women in United States prisons has increased by 700%. Through a unique collaboration with the Santa Barbara District Attorney's Office, Holistic Defense aims to reduce recidivism or repeat offenses. Holistic Defense offers the criminal justice client a working partnership between her public defender and a holistic defense social worker. Working as a team, they help their client to navigate the complexities of the criminal justice system, as well as to address the root causes of the criminal activity. Holistic Defense is modeled on the highly successful Bronx Defenders Project, founded 20 years ago in New York by today's esteemed panelist, Robin Steinberg. Yes, we are. We are really fortunate to have her here. I would now like to ask Lisa Brabo, Executive Director of Family Services Agency, to please introduce today's panel so we can learn more about this important work.
Thank you, Mickey. We sure appreciate all your hard work in getting us to where we are. So first of all, I want you to know how excited we all are that you are here and these fabulous panelists are before us. This is a really wonderful occasion for all of us. I wanted to tell you a little bit about a very brief history about our partnership with the Public Defender's Office. We actually together worked on a grant application to the Arnold Foundation for a pilot project for holistic defense here in Santa Barbara County. And lo and behold, we were successful with the grant application. That was wonderful. And then we actually went about implementing a pilot project for 2 years that was heavily evaluated. And because this was new in Santa Barbara County, we had many complexities to navigate for the evaluation process and for the services. And if you have ever done any complex project with anyone that you know that you either end up on the other side of that as really good friends, or you're not getting along so well. And I'm glad to say that we ended up pretty well on the other side of that. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. The first is Tracy Macuga right here. We have the bios up on the screen. So Tracy's the public defender for Santa Barbara County. She has more than 27 years of experience in criminal defense law, having served in the Office of Public Defender in Riverside and San Diego counties, as well as in private practice. Tracy has dedicated her career to defense, looking to turn the Santa Barbara County Public Defender's Office into a national model of holistic, client-centered representation. And we know that that is quite a big goal to have before you. And so far, so good, I would say. And then next to Tracy, we have Lemaire Kyle Griffiths. She is actually Director of Training and Complex Litigation at Still She Rises in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She's been a lifelong public defender, amplifying the voice of the poor in Kentucky, Massachusetts, and Washington. And she's taught investigators, attorneys, mitigation specialists, and law students for many years. And then to her left is Robin Steinberg. She's founder and CEO of the Bail Project, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today as well. And this is an unprecedented national effort to combat mass incarceration by transforming the pretrial system in the United States. She has she's had a 35-year career as public defender, and she's represented thousands of low-income people in over-policed neighborhoods and founded 3 high-impact organizations: Bronx Defenders, Bronx Freedom Fund, and Still She Rises. And then to her left is Gabriella Dotson. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and she's the Holistic Defense Program Manager for Family Service Agency. Her career spans 25 years, focusing on the provision of essential services for the most vulnerable in our community. And I wanted to note that Gabriella received quite a recognition. The California chapter of the National Association of Social Workers recognized her as the 2018 Social Worker of the Year among peers from Santa Barbara, Ventura, and North Los Angeles counties. And then right here, to the left of Gabriella, is Erica Batorf, and she has a master's in social work. She is a holistic defense advocate with Santa Barbara County Public Defender and is currently assigned to misdemeanor and felony cases for the Women's Fund Project. Prior to working with the public defender, Erica was employed with Family Service Agency, and she was the advocate that worked with that 2017 pilot project I was telling you about, funded by the Arnold Foundation. She's passionate about achieving social justice through community solutions. So we're actually going to start our panel presentation with Erica and a client story, so you can get a sense of what happens in a holistic defense situation.
Can you guys hear me? How about that? Is that better? Closer? Oh, man. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming today to learn about holistic defense. I wanted to take this time to highlight a story about a young woman who we have been able to help through the Holistic Defense Project between Family Service Agency and the Public Defender's Office. We began working with this young woman about 1 year ago during a law enforcement sweep of homeless encampments. Tracy, our public defender, approached me and said, "Hey, Erica, there's a woman you need to meet. She's been exposed to trafficking, she's homeless, and the outreach workers haven't been able to connect with her, but I believe you can. Go, try and connect with her." And so I did. I approached the young woman and began utilizing a relational model of holistic defense to build trust, rapport, and ultimately a relationship with her. While doing community outreach, I employ the same compassionate, client-centered approach as we do when working with someone in court or jail to identify their goals. Right away, I learned that she would not leave her encampment because of a slew of warrants for theft-related charges and fear of being arrested. She also began to open up with me about her drug and alcohol use. Tracy and I continued to work alongside this young woman intensively over the course of a month. We promised to take care of her warrants and animals if and when she was ready to go to detox. Tracy ended up practically adopting those animals. She was hesitant, the young woman was hesitant, but also hopeful to have her warrants cleared and to come out of hiding. She'd been where she was for 3 years without seeing her family or children. I worked with our attorneys to get her warrants cleared, and subsequently the court to keep her out of jail if she entered treatment. We took her direct from the crisis center straight to detox, where she stayed for almost a month. Then we found a long-term treatment program where she completed 4 months of treatment. I wish I could say that the stars aligned and her life fell into place at this point, but that's not realistic with the women that we work with. A life of victimization, trauma, exploitation, homelessness, incarceration, losing children, and being in the justice system would take time to repair. Because we had established trust with this young woman, she came to me soon thereafter seeking treatment again. Actually, she called for help, and I went and pulled her out of her apartment. We were able to intervene quickly and get her out of the county this time for treatment. We found a high-end program willing to provide a scholarship for inpatient treatment where she could get trauma therapy, case management, and psychiatry that she so much needed. Then we found another program to scholarship sober living and outpatient treatment for her. During the past 4 months since starting the Women's Fund Project, we've supported this young woman through treatment, divorce, a child custody battle, and we have supported her at family court through meetings with legal and social service providers, and more recently, she began looking for employment. She is in the process of creating a resume for the first time in more than 10 years. I actually just worked with her today, finishing her resume, so this is a huge, huge accomplishment for her. She is attending medical appointments and learning to take care of herself independently. She is reconnected with her family and is visiting with her children on a regular basis. I tell this story not only because it highlights this young woman's journey of strength, courage, and hope to leave the past behind, but also because it encapsulates the 4 pillars of holistic defense. Holistic defense is a radical yet sensible model of public defense pioneered by Robin Steinberg that, when employed with the 4 pillars, can be adapted to any local community. That is exactly what we've done here in Santa Barbara. The first pillar is seamless access to services. In this story, we prevented this young woman from going to jail, removed her warrants, and directly transported her to a detox facility, to safety, where she wanted to be. We intensely collaborated with almost every community department and agency to remove any legal, bureaucratic, transportation, or medical barriers so that she could seamlessly access these life-saving services. The second pillar is dynamic interdisciplinary communication. What this means in our office is that when working a case, we are in frequent, open communication with all team members. That includes the client, most importantly, the attorney, the investigator, and the social worker or advocate in my case, about any case or client updates. We do not employ old school top-down directives from attorneys to the rest of the team. Rather, I as a social worker communicate freely with attorneys and clients to bring added value, strategy, and direction to a case. The third pillar requires advocates with an interdisciplinary skill set. Our office employs a variety of legal and non-legal advocates. Often you can find me in the courtroom working alongside attorneys to provide meaningful client narratives and mitigation to achieve positive legal outcomes. And just as frequently, you can find our attorneys out in the community advocating for clients' admission into programs. We are very hands-on. Attorneys trust me to build relationships with clients and bring valuable biopsychosocial information back to the team for improved legal outcomes. Conversely, attorneys frequently stop by the HD office to speak with our advocates about social work, and we cross-train about social work practices, systemic barriers, local programs, and strategizing ways to better engage the community. The fourth pillar requires our advocates to have a robust understanding of and connection to the community served. This young woman's story would not have been possible without our attorneys and advocates doing heavy community outreach in the local riverbed to build trust with an already skeptical and disenfranchised crowd. Our presence in the community as public defenders and protectors, advocates, and allies provides us a unique ability to understand the challenges our clients face, to navigate those barriers with them, and to defend the community against legal, institutional, and systemic barriers so that they can live more freely. I want to thank each of you for your generous donations because it has allowed us to work with this young woman as described here and 20 others with similar stories up to this point. She is alive and healthy out of jail with no warrants, grateful on most days, and reconnected with her family because of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. All right, so our first question goes to Robin. What is holistic defense?
Oh, so I could not do a better job in describing holistic defense, its 4 pillars, what's important, and why it's important. What I can tell you, just to give you some sense of perspective, right, is, in 1997, as America was reaching the apex of mass incarceration, 7 lawyers and myself joined together in the South Bronx, and what we wanted to do was try to use what we had learned as public defenders all over the country and to re-envision what public defense might look like. And what really brought us together was our view that traditional public defense, with sort of a narrow sole focus on the criminal case and what that means, was not sufficient either to meet client needs or really the call of justice. So what we looked at was, how do we respond as public defenders to the overlapping systems that our clients are involved in, whether it's family court or immigration court or housing or public benefits? And how do we address the underlying issues that are driving our clients into the system? Right? How do we address mental health issues and drug addiction and over-policing and disenfranchisement and poverty issues generally? And so the idea really underlying all of holistic defense was, how do we think about this in a much broader way than what you see on television, which is, I defend you on your criminal case, I then give you a big hug and you walk down the steps of the courthouse, and then your life falls apart, right? And nobody's really offered assistance, provided access to services, or support or defense. So holistic defense was really our understanding as a public defender community that more had to be done, and that clients had a right to more than they were receiving. And so if we wanted to change case outcomes and make them more positive, if we wanted to help people with better life outcomes, if we wanted to do a better job as public defenders, we knew that we had to create a new model. And so that model is what we called a holistic defense. It's a team-based model, it's a collaborative model, it's an interdisciplinary model. It really provides services in any way that a client defines for us that she or he may need, and then we get to work. We practiced for a very long time in this model. It's become sort of a standard of where public defenders want to go. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't really sure whether it worked or not. Like, I knew it worked from the perspective of clients were much more satisfied with what they were getting. Lawyers felt more engaged in the work they were doing. Communities felt more closely aligned with their public defender offices rather than feeling as if public defenders were separate and acted upon them. But it wasn't until RAND actually did a study of Bronx defenders' caseloads over 10 years that really asked the question, is this making a difference? And they did a randomized control test. And many people told me not to do it. And I was like, they're going to get the data. We may as well just let them do it. So we cooperated in every way we could. And what they were able to actually prove last year in those results was to show that over the 10-year period that they actually looked at what we had done in the Bronx, we saved over 1 million days in jail for clients. And if that's not enough, if that doesn't inspire you, if the humanity of people not having to be locked in cages and being in jails isn't enough to inspire you, maybe this will. That represented $160 million in savings to the taxpayers of our county. So whether you're motivated by justice or you're motivated by the dollars and cents, clearly holistic defense offers a better opportunity for clients, for public defenders, and for communities. And Lamera is going to talk about this. In 1915, I was invited to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and take this model of holistic defense and try it in Oklahoma. Now, my theory is if you can do something in Oklahoma, you can do it anywhere. And I'd never been there, so I was like, oh, Oklahoma, that sounds like fun. So in 2016, we brought the model to Tulsa, Oklahoma with a slight spin, right? And the spin really was, what would holistic defense look like for women? And would it look different than it does for men? And are the ways that we interact with women in the criminal legal system as defenders and a public defender community, should that be different than the way we interact with men, and if so, why and how? And so because Oklahoma is, you might say, still I don't understand, Robin, why you're going to Oklahoma. The answer is it's the #1 incarcerator of women in the world. And so it was sort of the ground zero for women's incarceration, and there was a foundation down there who was willing to fund us in our startup called Still She Rises. That would allow us to test this model specifically for women and specifically for moms, right? As we looked at what can we be doing better for women who are the fastest growing population in jails and prisons, not just in Oklahoma, not just in California, but across the country. So how might holistic defense serve them better? And I'm going to let Lemaire talk about that when it's her turn to talk.
So before we go to Lemaire, could you tell us a little bit about the Bail Project?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to put my other hat on now. So here's the thing. So I spent 35 years as a public defender fighting for clients one-on-one. I spent a lot of years building the Bronx Defenders and moving it from 8 people to 400 people in 21 years. And Still She Rises, of course, which is, still very much in my heart. But at the end of the day, I kept getting frustrated by this one thing, which was I could be the best public defender I could be. I could swing for the fences and win cases. I could build new public defender offices and inspire them and resource them well so they could do really good holistic work. But there was this one thing that kept on getting in the way that made all the difference, and that was bail. It was if you're in or if you're out at the beginning of a case is going to make all the difference, not just for how we represent you, but what the possibilities are. And so while I was at the Bronx Defenders, actually my husband and I had co-founded this very small little revolving bail fund that we didn't tell anybody about. It was called the Bronx Freedom Fund, and we didn't tell anybody about it because people thought we were insane. They were like, wait, you're going to raise money and pay people's bail. Are you out of your mind? People won't come back to court, terrible things are going to happen. And we were like, maybe, but we've been public defenders for a pretty long time, we're going to test this. So for 10 years, we ran this tiny little fund that had one grant of $100,000. We still use those dollars because bail comes back at the end of a case, so the money can go back into a fund over and over again. And we watched for 10 years what happened, and we were stunned by what we learned. And what we learned was the overwhelming majority of people came back to court. In the Bronx, it was 96%. Over half the cases got dismissed. Only 2% of clients ever got a jail sentence that was involved in the case we bailed them out on. And we began to realize that when bail gets set at the beginning of the case, that is probably one of the most important points in a case. What is going to happen to your case and to your life, right, is going to in large measure be determined by whether you're in or whether you're out. And of course, if you're in, you're not only in horrible, scary, terrifying, dehumanizing jail conditions, right? But you lose your job and your home and your immigration status gets jeopardized. You might get evicted. You may lose custody of your kids. Your pets might be taken away, right? All of your life circumstances become destabilized. So when we got the data from the Bronx Freedom Fund after all those 10 years, I decided what I wanted to do next, because I hadn't started enough things, was I decided, you know what, let's scale this thing nationally. And so in January of 2018, we started to scale what we call the Bail Project. And what it is a very similar proof of concept to the Bronx. So we have a national revolving fund. And what we do with that fund is we disperse funds to sites across the country where we're setting up bail project sites. We have folks on the ground who lead that work. We hire locally from the jurisdictions that we're in. They pay bail for clients who they interview. They support them through the process. We track the data. We tell the human stories. And we try to really understand what's happening in these jurisdictions, really with the idea that we want to make the long-term argument that systemic reform is necessary and cash bail needs to be eliminated. So we are now in 18 different sites across the country. We did over 8,000 bailouts last year. We are seeing very similar numbers that we saw in the Bronx. Over half the cases are getting dismissed. The overwhelming majority of people are coming back to court. And all people really need when you pay their bail for them is effective court notifications and support through the process. We opened up a site in Compton. Now, I'm going to just say one thing about California and bail, and then I'm not going to talk too much about this. So I came to California, we set up our central team. So the central team is what's supporting the 18 sites across the country, which will eventually be 40 sites, which will eventually bail out 100,000 people. But for now, this is our central team in LA. And I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm like, well, we don't need a bail project site in California. It's a blue state. And we're the bluest state in the country. We couldn't possibly need it around bail. And then I started looking into bail in California. And I realized that not only do we have the highest average jail population in the country, but 63% of people in our jails in California are there pre-trial on bail. That means they haven't been convicted of a crime, they are presumed innocent, but they do not have enough cash in their bank account to buy their freedom and the presumption of innocence. The median bail in California is $50,000. That is 5 times higher than the national median bail across the country. So we decided, all right, we're going to try one site in Compton, and I'll tell you the results of that, and then we'll get off the bail project for a while. We started a site in Compton, and we knew the bails were incredibly high. So we engaged UCLA Law School to partner with us to allow their law students to come into court and begin to make arguments to judges about reducing the bail amounts from where they were to lower amounts so the bail project could step in and pay the bails. So over the 9 months that ran in Compton, and we're running it again this year, we bailed out 77 people. We had a 97% overall return rate. 99% of our clients who were charged with violent felonies returned to court. 98% charged with any felonies and 95% charged with misdemeanors returned for each and every court appearance. And 99% of the clients that we bailed out during the course of the year had no rearrests from the time we bailed them out to the time their case closed and we got the bail back. Right? Those are remarkable statistics right here in California. So we are now expanding to Van Nuys, and my hope against all hopes is that at some moment we will be able to have a bail project site here in Santa Barbara, and we'll be able to start bailing out women.
Thank you. So, LaMayor, what specific challenges do justice-involved women face? Yes, please feel free.
Oh, awesome. So I can't sit. As you might have noticed from people talking about me, I've been to 4 different states now, and I went to Oklahoma because, as Robin pointed out, Oklahoma's #1 in incarcerating women. And when I got there, I didn't know what to expect. I actually read a book before I went there. You do a little bit of research, and I read this book called Mean Women, Mean Lives, and thought, well, that's a terrible title. I'm not mean. And the woman who wrote this is a sociologist, and she said the reason she wrote it is because she talked to a prison official, and that official said, well, why do you think there are so many women incarcerated in Oklahoma? And his response was, I guess they're just meaner. So that is an example of what specifically faces women. Women who get incarcerated are thought of not just as defendants, as men sometimes are, but also somehow as doubly bad. Not only have you got in trouble and you've committed some crime, according to some group of people, but you also are anti-woman. You are not being womanly enough in what you're doing. You should not be doing the things that you're doing. And I don't know the research on this. I assume that research is going on about this, but I really feel like there's been a flip. That there was a time that women who came into the criminal justice system were considered to be, oh, poor you. You must have gotten drug into this by your boyfriend or by a family member or something. And so women were sort of discounted. And now we've come back around and it's the same thought process, but it's the idea that you should have known better. What I've also seen in Oklahoma is criminalization of family matters. So there has been literally like punishment and penalization of poverty parenting. And the thing that horrified me when I got to Oklahoma was that the ranges of sentences for crimes such as child neglect are 0 to life in prison. A life sentence because somebody with more means can walk into your home and say you should be doing a better job as a parent. So, talking to women in those situations and working with women who are being told that they're bad, that being told that they're not womanly enough and being told that they can't possibly parent well, starts you off in an interesting place to create relationships and to work with services and to work with other people. And there's also an interesting thing with women. There's an interesting danger of courts imposing lots of services and things. And what I have appreciated about the holistic model is that that is driven through the office and focused by the client about where those services should go and who should be in charge of those services. And the goal with holistic representation in defense is that in the office, people who are learning women's stories, people who are really taking the time to find out, this whole team with different specialties, to find out what is going on and try to address it, that doesn't mean it necessarily has to go through the court. Because the danger with court-implemented services is that that is another way for women to end up back in jail or prison somewhere. Whereas if you have this interdisciplinary team who is working with somebody who is working with them where they are and can put services into place in a way that actually works with what the women we're serving need or want or what their goals are for the rest of their life, they're much more likely to not only survive, but succeed and thrive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Tracy. Tracy is next. How does holistic defense look in Santa Barbara County, and how does it differ from elsewhere?
Thank you. First of all, I feel silly talking about holistic defense in front of Robin and Lemire, because the inspiration for holistic defense for me came when Robin founded Bronx Defenders, and I was about to be a burnt out public defender who really wanted to throw in the towel because I felt like I wasn't helping anyone. I was fortunate because when I was brought here and was given the privilege and honor of running this organization, FSA had already done this remarkable heavy lifting by securing a grant on behalf of the Public Defender's Office because of the vision of Lisa and her incredible team, who said, we have to bring holistic defense to this county because what FSA sees is exactly mirrors what Lemire and Robin have already talked about, is that the carnage that we see every single day that spills into our criminal courtrooms, many of which is preventable, many of which, if we could wrap our arms around those people before they come into the criminal justice system, we could solve a lot of the problems. So I walked into this beautiful package. I walked into this gift. And the gift started with Erica, because Erica was our single social worker that was put into our office to fix all of Santa Barbara County's problems. You did a good job. She did a good job. And so you can imagine, like when you're looking at the statistics here, and when you've heard these stories, imagine the weight on Erica's shoulders when we were trying to launch this and convince our board and the political powers in our county that this is worthwhile to continue to invest in. And so holistic defense here is really modeled on what Robin did. I'm not an innovator. I am not someone who's created something different or better. In fact, all I have done is build what I dreamt of being able to do after I read about what Robin did. And as I joked over lunch today that when Robin moved from the East Coast to here, I stalked her. And no, I'm admitting to a crime, I'll tell you. So she came to LA, and I literally barraged her with emails until she invited me to her home, which is stalking, although it was announced, and said, you know, I wanted her to bring her energy here to this office and to start helping me build what I believed was important. And she did a presentation in this room with a very skeptical group of public defenders who are also very burnt out and overworked, that care more than you could ever imagine, that is immeasurable, the passion that they carry every single day to do what we do. And Robin came in, sat there, and was it a hostile audience?
Some of it.
Yeah, a little. Because you know what?
There were a few.
My staff said, gosh, what, you're going to ask me to do more Makuga? You're not, you're asking me to carry a heavy caseload, and now you're asking me to do this too? So I'm not describing anything new, but I'm telling you it's modeled on what Robin's done. We now, because of FSA and our partnership, grant funding with you, which I can't thank you enough, we have Deepak 6 social workers in our office. So we have 6 social workers. So we've gone from 1 to 6. So our bandwidth and our ability to wrap our arms around many of the individuals who need this kind of help has increased. It's not enough, but it's increased. So.
Thank you. Okay, Gabriella, could you provide a brief description of the Arnold Foundation 2-year pilot that the Public Defender's Office did here with FSA and what it showed?
Sure thing. So between 2016 and 2018, we worked in conjunction with the Public Defender's Office and the Arnold Foundation. And really the research project was to do 3 things. It had 3 aims. The first was to determine if holistic defense has the potential to reduce recidivism, provide information on how holistic defense reduces recidivism, and determine if a bigger randomized control trial was feasible. And so our research did that. It had significant impact on the Public Defender's Office because it really changed the way we practiced. And it also lended a culture shift not only with Family Service Agency, public defenders, but also how we interact with Probation Office, how we interact with our other community stakeholders, because we brought this model to them too. The research found that holistic defense legal case outcome was more favorable than those of the controls. And this is going to mimic exactly what Robin talked about in her study for the RAND. So we have some really amazing outcomes from our research. So our legal outcomes were more favorable than those of the controls, and they include a higher number of charges being dismissed without negatively impacting recidivism. The outcomes indicate the client's potential to stabilize their lives more quickly compared to the controls, therefore decreasing the likelihood of recidivism. Holistic defense clients, on the average, were sentenced to 50% fewer days than their control counterparts. Picture this, a mother having to serve 50% less days incarcerated. That is astounding for her children, for her family, for our community, for the school system. The shorter custody sentence served by our clients in the study, there was 82 clients, estimated 1,584 days of incarcerated served by 48 people. And this saved Santa Barbara County approximately $250,000 in jail incarceration costs. So this is a small pilot, but I can see how this number can grow exponentially. $250,000 that we saved, but we also saved so many thousands of days with these individuals that we worked with. Also that came from this research is that the ongoing relationship between the advocate, Erica, Shane is here, Stephen's here, our advocates, that relationship is really transformative in our community. These individuals now have somebody who can come to, somebody they can have conversations with, sometimes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But this relationship is really important, and it speaks to kind of the heart of what holistic defense is. It's really a relationship-based, individual-focused way of practicing in the criminal justice system. One of the things we did find that's unfortunate is that there are not a lot of low or no-cost community-based services for us to refer our clients to. Many of our clients don't have any health insurance or any insurance, and so finding resources are really difficult. Our holistic defense advocates spend many hours on the internet searching all through California to try to find appropriate places for them to go. But overall, the research, I think, is really amazing and outstanding, especially using the RAND study. I have our research here. It's quite thick. And I think it's really exciting to see how we can really take this program and take the research and kind of grow it exponentially, not only in California, but in other communities.
Thank you, Gabriella. So now a question for Erica. How does the social worker advocate build trust with their clients?
So in Santa Barbara, we use a relational model of holistic defense. And so everything that we do here when we're working with clients is relationship-based. And we everything that we do, I mean, when I start out working with a client, it's really important to just talk about what my role is, on the defense team, and let them know who I am, where I'm coming from. In Santa Barbara, we call ourselves advocates. Oftentimes, our clients have worked with social workers before in different capacities. And so, it is not uncommon for our clients to say, oh, you're a social worker? Are you going to take my kids away? And so in this capacity, we call ourselves advocates. And so we're advocates for our clients, we're advocates for the defense, and essentially, we use our backgrounds and our expertise as social workers to identify what the client's goals are, to identify and assess where they're at, and we meet them where they're at, physically, mentally, spiritually, literally wherever they're at, whatever capacity they have, we meet them where they're at, and we help them to build a roadmap, if you will, of what their goals are and how to get there. So we look at where they're at and where they want to be, and we help to provide a roadmap to get there. And we support them from the onset of the case, through the duration of the case, and out into the community upon release and into the community. And so that is a huge support that we're providing to people. And, essentially, oftentimes, and I can come on the case at any point in time, but ideally it works best when we come on in at the beginning. And so, I think just talking authentically about what my role is, what my intentions are, and how we're going to work together on the case to, hopefully dig deep with them to bring useful information, psychosocial information, back to, the attorney, to the case, so that we can not only improve their legal outcomes, but also improve their life outcomes and achieve those goals for them.
Thank you, Erica. So what we're going to do now is we have a few general questions, and anyone in the panel is welcome to answer those general questions. And then we're going to open it up to you for the questions that you have. I wanted to give you notice of that so you could think about what questions you have. So the first general question we have, moving forward, how hopeful is holistic defense as a criminal justice reform model for women?
So I can take that for a second. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge believer. But I also have to say, with all the incredibly nice things that have been said about my work, if it wasn't for Tracy and Erica and Gabriella and Deepak in the back, and when your incredible colleagues, I give lots of talks about holistic defense. Lamar gives lots of talks about holistic defense. Not every public defender office just gets up and wraps their arms around it and says we're going to do it. So that really is a tribute to the leadership here. And So really, my hat's off. So here's why holistic defense, I think, is particularly and uniquely situated well for women, right? I joke that I have spent my entire life standing in front of audiences and arguing that women are the same as men, and that we should be treated the same, and we have the same leadership capacities, and we have the same strengths, and we should be paid the same, and screaming to the rooftops. And I'm here to tell you that women are different. And that is a turnaround for me in this particular context, but here's why. When women come into the criminal legal system, they are coming in an entirely different set of circumstances than men who are coming in. So what you see and all the data shows, right, is that women coming into a criminal legal system, 86% of them report having been victims of sexual violence. Over half have been victims of intimate partner violence. Mental health issues are much higher. Physical health issues are much more complicated. Women coming into the criminal legal system, where 82% of them are charged with nonviolent cases, right? So it is mostly property, drug, and public order offenses. Women coming into the system, as those numbers will show you, have had community trauma, personal trauma, and they are being thrown into a system. And by the way, 80% of women coming into our criminal legal system are mothers. They are being thrown into a criminal legal system that, quite frankly, was built for men, with men in mind, through that particular lens. And almost everything about our criminal legal system and its policies and its regulations and what it looks like was built with men in mind. It is precisely those things, however, violence, domination, control, that will re-trigger women in their trauma that is unique to them and the trauma that they bring into the system with them. So we are doing way more harm than good. I will also, I'll step out as far as to say, I don't think that women have any place in the criminal legal system as it exists. They simply should be diverted out. That is one of the ways we should start to decarcerate America. We should think about getting women out of the criminal legal system in any way we can. And since we know 80% of them are moms, what we also know is that 2.3 million children every year are separated from their moms because their moms can't pay bail. 2.3 million. And if you're an incarcerated mother, you are 5 times more likely to have your child or children wind up in foster care at enormous cost to them and to taxpayers than an incarcerated father. So holistic defense is situated beautifully, right, to address the underlying issues that women are bringing into the system and the intersectional systems that are going to impact them, specifically the family court system and child rearing, right, and those conversations that Lamira was having about how people judge how women are raising children. So holistic defense, frankly, is probably, if I can't get all the women out of the system tomorrow, which would be my first choice, then we really ought to be supporting women with holistic defense so that they actually can receive the care and treatment that they deserve and have the defense in these interlocking systems that are going to challenge not just taking away their freedom, but to also take away their children.
Would anyone else on the panel like to address this question? I can read it again. How hopeful is holistic defense as a criminal justice reform model for women?